That's what I look for all the time. When a quarterback throws a touchdown pass, I actually watch to see who he goes and celebrates with. Then a quarterback doing his six-shooter guns and pointing up in the crowd and doing all that other bullshit that's very self-promotional, but it's not about winning.
There has always been a tradition of celebrating touchdowns in the NFL. From the high-stepping end-zone dances of the past to the choreographed team routines of today, the league has long treated celebrations as part of its spectacle. Quarterbacks, those chosen leaders of franchises, have taken part in this culture since the earliest days of professional football. But recently, a voice that carries more weight than most has stepped forward to challenge the very idea of those celebrations. Tom Brady, arguably the greatest quarterback to ever play the game, sparked controversy with remarks that cut against the grain of today's NFL. Brady, a legend defined by his discipline and relentless pursuit of victory, dismissed these celebrations as rubbish. In his eyes, they're unnecessary distractions. He argued that the true precedent should not be one of individual showmanship, but of unity, moments where teammates rally together, not splinter apart into personal spotlights. For Brady, football has always been about the collective, not the selfie. And his blunt critique has now ignited a firestorm of debate. Are modern players chasing highlight reels or losing sight of what it truly means to lead team?
Because what did I do? I looked for my offensive lineman every time. I went down and celebrated in the end zone with my teammates every time. I wanted everyone to feel like they were part of the success.
Tom Brady began his remarks with what sounded like a lesson in leadership. He spoke of his playing days, reminding the world that whenever he crossed into the end zone or orchestrated a scoring drive, his first instinct was to turn back toward his linemen, the men who absorbed hits, opened holes, and protected his blind side. To Brady, a touchdown was never just his triumph. It was theirs. He celebrated shoulder to shoulder, helmets clashing in solidarity, a quarterback binding himself to the men who made his glory possible. On the surface, his words carried the weight of humility, a reminder of football's core truth. It is the ultimate team sport. But as his tone sharpened, the message shifted. What began as a reflection on inclusivity quickly morphed into something far more pointed. Brady grew combative, calling out the rising culture of self-centered theatrics. He didn't hide his disdain for players who thrive on the spotlight, those who turn the end zone into a stage for solo acts. His criticism wasn't vague. It was aimed directly at a generation that has embraced individuality as much as teamwork. And in doing so, Brady reignited an old, uncomfortable question. Where is the line between passion and ego? What is celebration? And what is simply showboating? In that moment, the NFL's greatest winner wasn't just sharing his philosophy. He was issuing a challenge, and it struck right at the heart of how today's stars define success.
I told the linemen, we're all running to the end zone and we're celebrating as a team because I think that's way more intimidating.
And then came the moment that lit the fuse. Tom Brady didn't just critique celebrations in general. He singled out a very specific style, one that has become synonymous with a new wave of young, black quarterbacks redefining the league. He pointed to Shedeur Sanders, to Deshaun Watson, and others who have leaned into expressive, flashy gestures, like the now iconic firing motions, suggesting that these weren't moments of shared victory, but acts of self-promotion. Brady argued that while these theatrics may elevate personal brands, they chipped away at the foundation of what football is supposed to represent: team unity. He implied that these quarterbacks were putting their names above the shield, the individual above the collective. To him, it wasn't about passion, it was about personal visibility, a currency that Brady himself, ironically, has never struggled to command. But what made his words sting even more was the delivery. His tone wasn't measured or neutral. There was a sharpness, a dismissiveness, almost as if he saw no legitimacy at all in the cultural significance behind these celebrations. For many, that struck a nerve, because for decades, black quarterbacks have fought not just for respect on the field, but for the right to bring their full personalities into the game, to connect with fans beyond the stat sheet. The backlash was immediate. Critics accused Brady of more than just being old school. They accused him of thinly veiled bias, of reinforcing double standards that have long existed in the NFL. Suddenly, what began as a debate over touchdown dances had erupted into a much larger conversation about race, identity, and the evolving culture of football itself.
Then a quarterback doing his six-shooter guns and pointing up in the crowd and doing all that other bullshit that's very self-promotional, but it's not about winning.
Tom Brady's comments, at first glance, seemed to be a straightforward critique of touchdown celebrations. A veteran quarterback reflecting on the importance of teamwork over individual spotlight. But the deeper those words were examined, the more they revealed something else, an uncomfortable truth about the NFL and about sports as a whole. Brady's critique of Shedeur Sanders, Deshaun Watson, and other black quarterbacks didn't exist in a vacuum. Whether he intended it or not, it echoed a decades-long history of black athletes being judged by a separate, harsher standard than their white counterparts. This is not a new story. For generations, black athletes have faced scrutiny not just for how they played, but for how they carried themselves, how they celebrated, how they dressed, how they spoke. In many ways, it wasn't just about football or basketball or baseball. It was about control, an attempt to limit individuality and force black athletes into a mold of what was deemed acceptable. When Colin Kaepernick took a knee during the national anthem to protest racial injustice, he was vilified, labeled unpatriotic, and effectively pushed out of the league. Yet white players who later made similar gestures were often met with far less resistance. The double standard was plain, and it extended into the quarterback position as well. For black quarterbacks like Sanders and Watson, celebrations became more than just an act of joy. They were statements of identity, moments of cultural expression, and ways to connect with fans who saw themselves in these athletes. But when Brady dismissed those gestures as self-promotion, it fed into a narrative that has long been used to diminish black athletes, that their individuality is disruptive, while white players' leadership is celebrated as noble. The irony, of course, is that Brady himself built a brand bigger than the game, celebrated endlessly for his poise, his fire, and yes, his own expressions of dominance. What stung even more was the tone. There was an edge in Brady's words, a sharpness that felt less like philosophical disagreement and more like outright dismissal. For many players, fans, and analysts, that tone carried racial undertones, whether Brady realized it or not. And in today's NFL, an institution that has been forced to confront its history of exclusion, its lack of diversity in leadership, and its treatment of players who use their platforms to speak out, Brady's remarks landed with a thud. The backlash was swift. Fellow athletes, commentators, and fans flooded social media, calling his comments tone-deaf at best, racially charged at worst. Critics argued that Brady had unintentionally aligned himself with a long-standing pattern in which black players are asked to suppress their individuality in the name of team first. And by doing so, he not only disrespected a new wave of quarterbacks bringing energy and culture to the game, but also put his own values under the microscope. What Brady failed to account for is that his platform is not neutral. When one of the greatest players in NFL history speaks, his words carry weight far beyond simple opinion. And in this case, his attempt to defend teamwork over showmanship was drowned out by the larger implications of his critique. For many, it reinforced the idea that the NFL's progress toward inclusivity remains fragile, and that even its most respected icons can unintentionally set it back. Brady has long been celebrated for his leadership, his work ethic, his ability to unify a team under impossible pressure. But off the field, these remarks have forced people to question whether that leadership extends to embracing the full diversity of today's NFL. His words have, in a sense, become a dividing line between the traditions of an older league and the evolving culture of a new one. In the end, this controversy is not just about one quarterback's opinion. It's about the NFL itself, about whether the league will continue to judge players by outdated standards or allow them the freedom to express who they are. It's about race, culture, and the way sports reflect the struggles of society at large. It's a reminder that even the greatest of champions are not immune to accountability. So now the questions linger. Was Brady simply voicing a personal belief, or did his words reveal something deeper about how black quarterbacks are perceived? Should these players be forced to tone down their celebrations to fit into a traditional mold? Or should every athlete, regardless of race, have the freedom to express themselves as they choose? And perhaps most importantly, will this controversy fade away with time, or will it become a lasting mark on Brady's legacy? The NFL prides itself on progress, but progress means reckoning with uncomfortable truths. And in this case, Brady's words have become part of that reckoning. What do you think? Was this simply an old-school quarterback clashing with a new generation? Or did Tom Brady unknowingly expose a much deeper flaw in how the NFL views its players? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.